So it's April the 22nd, 2020, and it's around about 12 midday here in England. The video I made yesterday, Insights Part 2, that was obviously the 21st. Now we can confirm that, and that was at 8 p.m. And today I'm losing my YouTube link virginity, and brace yourself, it's going deep. And anyway, yeah, I'm going to share a link today, and I'm not sharing it because I need science to prove what I'm saying is right. I'm sharing it because there are those of you out there that think, well, that's all very well going along in this dreamland, sort of, saying all these things and making all these wild statements, but you can't just do that and then, and that's that. So for those of you who need sort of, there's everything I say is not coming from necessarily a scientific standpoint, because I couldn't prove everything I say. But what it is there's things that I find out with the scientific papers that sort of help confirm things within yourself, shall I say. And then, it makes you, some things you confirm for yourself anyway, you just see it, you just live it. You live synchronicities. You don't really say that, nobody can take that away from you. It's just a higher sort of awareness. You're stepping back a bit. But at the same time, science is a good thing and a bad thing. It's good from a perspective of, it confirms to other people that, this is true then, and that's right, and this is how you do it, and it helps us get along and survive and everything else. And there's another bad side of it, that you're not allowed to say anything that hasn't been proven by science. You're not even, if they went by that philosophy themselves, they wouldn't even be able to try to discover anything new, just like they're trying to stop us from doing, because they would only be able to allow to pursue what it already exists, because everything else don't. That sort of thing is like self-eating. So yeah, I thought I'd share a link to, it's called the Hemo protein, Hemo. And my purpose of this is to show you guys that viruses are not actually a bad thing for us. They're actually essential to human life itself. And this protein, which has been discovered very recently and written on, it's been written on, been studied for years, but now it's been sort of let out into the wider scientific community very recently. Basically, these viruses that go around are absolutely essential. They get into our DNA, so they affect 8% of our DNA, and the way they get into our DNA is by attaching themselves to our sex cells, and then they go in and they produce with the sex cells. So that's how they actually get into that genetic code. And when science says junk DNA, what they're basically saying is we have no idea what that DNA is for. Of course it isn't junk DNA. Of course it isn't. But it's not allowed to exist because they don't know what it does. So they just call it junk. Let's just throw it out. Let's just cut out the human body and throw it away. Don't need that. So it's literally their mindset. Part of that is this Hemo. We wouldn't be here as a species, and we certainly wouldn't be as conscious as we are without viruses. But this Hemo virus is basically a protein, and what it does, it's an ancient virus, the likes of the ancient viruses that are now being released by the polar ice cap melt, which is something I'll go into a little bit deeper later on in this, hopefully. I've got about 14 minutes to share what I've got to share before my memory runs out, but on the phone now, stop. 14 minutes. Basically what's been discovered on this virus, which these ancient viruses sort of get released as the polar ice cap melts or whatever happens, and these viruses are landing around us. I think it's something like, is it 800,000 virus cells are landing per hour per square meter on planet Earth, something like that. but lock yourself up indoors, So anyway, what happens is this hemo protein basically surrounds as your embryo is being made and the fetus is forming for you ladies out there. So it exists in men and women, but it particularly really comes to life around when women are pregnant. And what happens is it basically, the protein surrounds these cells, which when they get to about 8 cells, when they start splitting off and they get to about 8 cells, and then it starts becoming like an actual fetus eventually. But they surround that and they stop that protein protects your reproductive sex cells and everything else from being attacked by your own body's immune system. So, because your own body's immune system would see it as being a foreign body, and this is where it gets really strange, like extraterrestrial. Our viruses extraterrestrial. We know they can exist. We know they can exist out in outer space, and we know that the more they're gathered, the longer they exist. But also, when viruses are wrapped in carbon. This flies, by the way. For some reason, certain flies are really attracted to the camera lens. So when these viruses are surrounded in carbon, they can last. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a state of assumption from their deterioration that they show, but they can last hundreds of millions of years. So you could literally put something on a comet that's going past here now or something, and it would do its cycle and eventually come back to the same spot. And all that time it would have that virus or whatever it is on board, taking it wherever it's got to go. That's another thing altogether. But going back to this original, the way that our fetuses and the actual the fetus itself is protected from our body's immune system. So our own body's immune system, a female body immune system, does not end up eating or destroying the actual baby itself before it's even able to become form and actually while it's going up. And these are very, very high levels, and it released into the bloodstream of these of any female who's pregnant. Also exists in the male. It exists in both all the time, obviously, but then it's sort of brought to life, if you know what I mean. So knowing that, we wouldn't exist as a species if it wasn't for virus. So you start to think, well, why are viruses so bad then? Well, they're not, but they're very, very much connected to human consciousness, and these viruses have sort of opened up new pathways. It's another one. These viruses have opened up new pathways, and it gets you thinking, like, why are certain people in power so afraid of these viruses? Think about it. Who's actually afraid of these viruses? Who's locking everybody down? Who's worried about the polar ice cap melting? Just think about that for a second, let that sink in. It's not us. We're sort of just seeing natural cycles of the earth. It's almost like and what worries me as well, this is what worries, you've got a conflict in life all the time, trying to protect yourself, trying to make yourself aware of things. But what also happens is they've been doing tests on what happens if they switch this hemo protein off in mice. Now, they're saying they've only done it in mice, but obviously a lot of this test for the hemo protein itself was done on dead baby fetuses. So, I'm the sky's the limit on what they'll get up to. That's what I'm saying. So basically, they're doing studies on what happens to mice, and what happens is that they don't develop right. They're just not right. And you start thinking about, is this virus, all these viruses that go around, is it like, I don't want to say like, it's shifting human consciousness in a certain direction, and then that is then going on the sex cells which are then protected by ancient viruses. You know, new viruses can be quite bad for us. And what I think of it as well with the new viruses, they go into the body's. They only affect, and this is where it gets really weird, either really vulnerable people, anybody with low immune system. So if you're fearful of the virus itself, or you're fearful in life, or really upset, maybe traumatized, and things like that, that's the people it tends to affect and make ill, because your immune system naturally gets suppressed during that anyway. And then you've got the likes of people who are really vulnerable, who are being attacked at the moment by, you know, certain diseases and God knows what else, and cancers, and it seems to be getting them. But for everybody else who's just a normal sort of lucky enough to be a sort of healthy human being walking around, it's you sort of might get a little bit of a symptom of something, and that's about it. So yeah, it's food for thought, because if, let's say, I don't trust what goes in your body, right? So I will never have the vaccine. I don't think they'll be mandatory. I don't think that point will come. I'd hope it wouldn't. But I would never have it. And the reason being is, with all what I've seen from a scientific side and what they look into and everything else, it makes me wonder what's going into that you don't know on a microbiotic level. That, you know, we all know the recent stories about India kicking Bill Gates out because he's, you know, they find that their pregnancy rate has gone down amongst their children as they've grown up. You know, anybody, and you know, I don't want to get into that side of it too much. I'm just trying to show like another side of it, another side of what's going on here. And could you switch off that protein and stop everybody from being able to give birth to healthy children, or maybe children that think a certain way? On another perspective, if you get the virus, and this is where it becomes really interesting, what this is telling us is, if we get the virus and we then go on and recreate, you know, procreate with another healthy, you know, and the man and the woman gets together in a normal relationship and recreates, that then gets protected by viruses and it gives birth to a new consciousness. So a new wave of consciousness comes along, which is different. I'm not going to say it's an upgrade or a downgrade or anything. It's different. We're going into different times, and it's cycles. And these cycles, and when the polar ice caps melt, they release these bugs. You know, we've had some released in Russia recently, and that was a big scare. And there's been other ones that have been discovered during this virus now, which this virus has sort of overclouded. These ancient viruses have been discovered, but very, very complex, very strange activity. And it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? It makes you wonder what's actually going on in the world. So I'll leave you with that one. I've got so many more to come up, but let me know what you think about. You know, I'm not one of these who needs to have all comments put in the thing, but I do like to have a bit of feedback, because I don't know where I'm going. I'm just speaking to a camera, and I've got no social media, and then all of a sudden, you know, I might get the odd comment, and that's it. I don't really know what's going on. But it'd be nice to know if you're interested, or if there's anything that you can add to it, if there's anything that you think about, you know, what path I should pursue, or have I seen this, or have I seen that, then please add it, you know, please add the comment. But yeah, leave you with an interesting thought, a bit deep. Excuse the jokes at the beginning, but you know, you've got to keep it all as light-hearted as you can. So viruses are essential to human life. Polar ice cap would give birth to viruses which